Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club podcast, where every week me and Miss Boo take turns picking films to watch and talk about. Some are good, some are bad, but they're always fun at the Film Club. Miss Boo, how are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, I'm a little sad that Undead September is coming to an end, but I think you are incredibly excited today for this pick.
I'm very excited. This is our first Nicolas Cage film of the podcast.
That's right.
And I'm very hyped because this movie was wonderful.
It was interesting. We came into this completely blind, hadn't seen it before. We'd only seen the trailer.
And the memes.
Because, man, this movie is a walking, talking, breathing meme. But it was really funny.
It was really good. I dug the shit out of this movie.
I wasn't really sure, if it was going to be one of those things where the trailer's hilarious and then you watch the movie and it's like, oh, well.
They used all the best jokes in the trailer.
Exactly.
And this is like 2 hours of meh.
And I was surprised it was 2 hours. I didn't think it was going to be that long.
Yeah, I dug it. We should tell people. The movie we're watching today is Vampire's Kiss, the 1988?
I believe?
Yeah, 1988 film starring Nicolas Cage. It is wonderful. It is about this literary agent who, in this slow descent into madness, believes he has been infected with vampirism. And comedy ensues. That is going to be how I describe a lot of things that happen. It's like Nicolas Cage does a bump of cocaine at the club. Comedy ensues. It's great.
Nicolas Cage eats a pigeon.
Comedy ensues. I'm really excited to talk about this one because it was a lot of fun. This is a good blind watch.
Yeah, I had hoped for the best, and it was actually very entertaining. The story was engaging because it just keeps you guessing, what's real, what's fantasy.
Yeah, this is kind of like a totally different movie, but it's kind of had like a Jacob's Ladder thing going on.
Yeah.
Because Nicolas Cage plays Peter Loew, who is this literary agent, really high-strung, yuppie character, who we see he has a psychiatrist, he's suffering from this weird
in the movie they call it madness, but when we both watched it, we were really picking up that it was more he was suffering from schizophrenia.
Yeah, I mean, it's never stated. It's no doctor says he's a schizophrenic. But yeah, that's basically what the armchair psychologist on the movie websites have dubbed it, so we'll go with that.
Yeah,
but Nicolas Cage is playing this character, and
he's very outrageous in this movie.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. I was trying to find the word for it because I'm like, Nicolas Cage, subtle performance? Never.
No.
But yeah, he is. If there's such a thing as an over-the-top Nicolas Cage performance, this is pretty damn close.
Definitely, and it's set in New York, and I think that's kind of how this movie really works, is because New York, like LA and Hollywood, we're so used to eccentric and just
weird characters
out and about in the street. You just, you kind of just walk forward, don't really pay attention to them. Because, I mean, there's some things that happen in this movie, and it's like, how is he not getting arrested? Or there's no security, no cops anywhere. And it's
the other thing is some of the scenes that they're shooting, it looks like they just had a camera, a sound guy, and Nicolas Cage. And I'm like,
they did, yeah.
Wait, was that actually a thing?
Mm-hmm. We'll get to that later.
Oh, God.
But that is very much
I want to know which scenes Nick Cage went fucking cockeyed over.
We will.
Okay,
But where do you want to start?
Okay, so the Jacob's Ladder situation that I was alluding to before. We should probably talk about that because Peter Loew, he's suffering from this bout of madness and whatnot. Yeah. He's losing touch with reality. And the movie, and you told me you were having issues discerning what was real and what was fake, and you're almost convinced that the vampire lady is real.
Well, should we spoil the ending? Because that kind of goes with my analysis of the movie.
We might have to. Spoiler warning for a movie older than the both of us.
Yes.
Significantly.
Yes.
So, we'll go with that.
Peter dies in the end of the movie. And we have, this beautiful cut of the city line of New York over the water. And we have this clip of our vampire in the movie, and she's, talking to Peter, and it's just my angel, kind of the way that she's been speaking to him throughout the film. So it kind of makes you feel like maybe he wasn't all crazy. Maybe she really was a vampire and she was coming to him at night and feeding on him and also kind of just driving him further and further to insanity.
I don't buy it. I am fully in the camp that Peter is completely crazy, because we get all those scenes where he's like, oh, he goes to meet the vampire woman in bed and he sits down and he hands like the blank air coffee and just like drops it there, or he invites no one into his shower and they start getting free and there's no one there. You know, and also when he looks in the mirror and he's like, where am I? And you can obviously
see him, yes.
You can obviously see Nick Cage's reflection, but Nick Cage doesn't see Nick Cage's reflection, and the comedy ensues.
And that's why, you know, throughout the whole movie I'm thinking, okay, he is mentally unstable and he is just losing it, as you know, as far as we get into the film. And it was just that one clip where it kind of throws you and it's like, well, maybe he really wasn't losing it. Maybe it was her. But to kind of tie it to Jacob's Ladder, yeah, you know, maybe it just was this the entire time. And it's just kind of like a fever dream where he meets this girl this one time and it's just parlays it into the story of she's a vampire and she's changing him.
Well, because his girlfriend, they're, you know, about to be intimate and a bat comes into the apartment and it, like, freaks him out. And then, you know, he meets this new girl, hits on her at a club, and it's like, it's that thing where, you know, in dreams you see two separate things and they just morph into your dream to one thing, and it's like, that's kind of what's going on here, except instead of it being a dream, he's going crazy.
Yeah, and he even talks to his therapist about the bat coming in, and he says that, you know, he was getting intimate with his girlfriend, and she left the room, and, you know, things calmed down, but as he was, you know, chasing the bat around the room, became aroused again, and it was just this thing of, you know, was that the manifestation of, okay, bat, vampire, this new girl that I meet at a bar, she's the vampire.
Horny.
It was horny, drunk.
Little stoned. It was a whole wonderful night.
Yeah.
And, okay, and on that psychiatrist thing, because we get a twist at the end where we find out the psychiatrist is not real, is a figment of Peter's imagination in a wonderful
very much like the Sixth Sense.
Yeah. I just really like the sequence where Nicolas Cage is just talking on a street corner and no one's there, and then it intercuts with
he's in his psychiatrist's office.
And it's this nice, like, high-rise. He's not, like, all covered in blood and, like, looks crazy. He looks like, you know, Peter Loew, the very, you know, nice and respectable yuppie, you know, literary agent. And it's just a really funny, interesting, like, little sequence there, how it cuts in between, how we have, like, certain responses, callbacks, and it's this weird, like, pulls you in and out of Peter Loew's, like, headspace, and it's really cool.
And that was the scene that I wanted to spoil for later. That was the one where they shot on a telephoto lens.
Really?
And the people walking around him are just kind of reacting to him. Because, I mean, he has blood on his mouth, on his shirt, and he's talking to an edge of a building.
And he's holding literally like a 2x4?
Yeah, it's a part of a...
like a fence set or something?
It's part of a pallet that he breaks off in the scene before, and it's just, you know, this sharp, jagged piece of wood, and he's screaming, and he's covered in blood, and it's like, yeah,
he's wandering around the streets of New York yelling, I'm a vampire! A vampire! And it's so weird and wonderful and great.
Another scene where they were using just random New Yorkers walking on the street was the part when he breaks that piece off the pallet and he asks the couple, kill me. And he's handing the wood over to
And the guy's just like, dude, fuck off.
And he's just like, no, that's okay, and walks around him. And I was just like, those poor people just trying to go to work thinking, oh my god, this guy wants me to kill him in the middle of the street. Could
you imagine if somebody did that? It's like, and they're walking around, it's like, why did the guy from Moonstruck ask me to kill him? What the fuck?
Except, was he in Moonstruck before or after this?
I don't know when Moonstruck came out. I'll be real with you.
I know.
But yeah, it's so good. And I love that reveal with the psychiatrist, because I'm just like, how it's done is wonderful. And it's just so cool. And also on that note, it's the, you know, the telephoto lens, he's talking to real New Yorkers. Can we just talk about Nicolas Cage for a second? he is committed in this
definitely.
role. He is, because that's the thing about Nick Cage, in no matter what the movie is, even if it's like really bad, even if he's not getting paid a lot, he will give you 110% every movie, every performance.
I mean, we're gonna chalk it up to the part where he eats a live cockroach for this movie, and it was just a gross scene. And I mean, I wouldn't want to do it myself, and kudos to him for being that committed. But it also takes it back to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, that's a Renfield move.
Yeah.
Because we have it in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and a lot of the Dracula things where, the guy that's, struck by madness under the guise of Dracula, he starts eating insects and stuff like that.
Yeah, because Dracula is not going to fully change his familiar. Because he needs somebody to do the dirty work for him while he's slumbering away. So that's why I thought it was cool to kind of tie it into the lore of Dracula and vampirism. But that's why I was also convinced maybe he is kind of in this limbo, because just like, Renfield from the past, here he is eating bugs. But
it's really funny. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because we have the Rachel character, right? That's the vampire woman.
Rachel.
She's the Dracula, and she's, seducing and tempting in Peter, who becomes like her Renfield or whatever. And it's just like really interesting because, he's like now he's like her slave, and it's like weird, and he's going crazy, and he's eating bugs and shit. I don't know, it's really cool. Also, another homage in this is when he's going through the club, and he's walking all like weird and crazy with his teeth out. That's literally Nick Cage, like, I'm gonna walk like Nosferatu. And we also see the movie Nosferatu in this film.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, okay, I'm turning into a vampire. Who am I gonna be? Am I gonna be suave like Dracula? No, he goes Count Orlok, creepily, walking around the city and the nightclub.
Fake plastic vampire teeth.
That was a hilarious scene.
I like how he goes to the place and they're like, well, we have these nice fiberglass ones, strong, durable. These could replace your real teeth. And he's like, yo, you got something cheaper? And they're like, well, we got the plastic ones. They're like, $1.50. He's like, okay, I'll take those ones. Those are cheap. I'm like, not even committed to his own insanity.
I just like that we have this occult store. We never see it in the rest of the movie, just this one time.
And it just exists.
And of course, it's gray and gloomy outside, and there's wind, and it's like, of course, this is where you would find an occult store in the middle of New York.
It's the tropey aspect of it just makes it better.
Yeah, and the cheap $1 Dracula fangs that you could find at any costume shop. It's like, yeah, that of course is going to be his fangs for this movie. It's not going to be cool prosthetics. It's going to be something hella cheesy.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just running around, and you see the other New Yorkers kind of looking at him like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, and he's just... It's the whole thing where Nick Cage is he's all in on this. Like, that's the thing about this movie that... Because I'm going to be real with you. This movie, most of it is not very good. It's, like, kind of okay. Some of the jokes are cool. Some of, like, the performances are good. But, like, Nick Cage is why this movie is remembered.
Definitely. And, I mean, the fact that we have, one of the biggest memes of all time is a screen grab from this movie.
Oh, God. It's the Nick Cage face.
Yeah, and it's like, I have seen that everywhere. I've used it before, and it's like, I had no idea what movie it was from until we were doing this. And it was just like, bro, it's like, this is really happening.
I think I might have mentioned this on another episode or something, but when I was in high school, for my senior year of English, there was this like table or whatever, this group of tables in the back of the room. And there was this one kid who would show up when we were doing like study hall, like, writing, our basically the term papers so we could fucking graduate.
Yeah.
And he showed up with a framed picture of Nicolas Cage, and it was this picture. And it was like this exact picture, and he set it up on his desk. And like all the homies were there, and they would have it set up at the end of the table, and the professor was like, "Why is that there?" And he was straight faced, was like, "It's just a beautiful picture. It inspires me." The meme lords, man. These people were meme lords. And this movie was a meme lord before memes were a meme.
Exactly. They had no idea that this movie in the 80s was gonna launch off a meme universe, decades and decades later.
Another cool thing about this movie is, and also about Nicolas Cage's performance in particular, have you ever seen the film Color Out of Space?
I don't think I have.
All right, it's a H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. It's done by Richard Stanley. It's really good. I really dig it. It stars Nicolas Cage. And in the movie, Nicolas Cage is this, all shucks kind of dad character, farmer. And he gets infected by this, alien color thing, and it starts warping his personality and, corrupting his mind. And he starts doing the voice from this movie because this movie was Richard Stanley's favorite Nicolas Cage performance, and he's like, you have to do the voice. That it's amazing. It is artistic.
Well, to kind of go along with that, I guess GQ did an interview with Nicolas Cage in 2018, and they asked him, what was your favorite performance that you've done? And he said it was this film. And it's just like, I can believe it because he put so much into this performance that it's just wild.
Yeah, and it's a thing where I really feel like you can see Nicolas Cage just taking the ball and running with it. I feel the director was like, Nick, do whatever you want. It's all you.
You do you. And this is what we got. Because, he looks deranged in the movie.
Yeah.
He has, a couple of calm moments where he comes down. But it's just like, you could just see it in his eyes. He's not there. He's letting Peter Loew take the wheel, and he's just gone.
It's such a good performance. I would highly recommend people watching this just to watch Nicolas Cage in full insanity.
This movie, while it wasn't, a box office, masterpiece.
It was a giant flop.
It was a flop, but it did inspire Christian Bale when he did his...
American Psycho?
American Psycho, when he went to go do his test screening for it. He, put on the Peter Loew persona, and they're just like, you know what, we're going to give you the job. And it's like, yeah, after thinking about it, that is Peter Loew that we see in American Psycho.
Okay, that's another weird thing, because watching this movie and then American Psycho, they're kind of the same movie, right? These two yuppie, power-hungry people, super materialistic, are slowly going insane, and, the end of the movie is a whole twist where it's like, oh, what you saw wasn't real.
Yeah.
With Peter Loew, he's like, oh, he thought he was turning into a vampire, but he's just insane. Everything he's seen up to that point was just his descent into madness. In American Psycho, it's Patrick Bateman kind of descending into madness, believing he's this, psycho. He's a serial killer.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, it's just like, well, what was real? Because it's like, all the people you thought you killed, they're alive.
Yeah.
And they're coming back next week. And it's like, what? Well, it's like the same twist thing going on, where the main character that we're following through the movie is insane.
Yeah.
And it's like, Kino. This movie is great.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to see how, what was considered a flop has such a cult following.
A huge cult following. But on that note of it being a flop, I'll say this right now, I really dug this movie. It was super fun. I'm probably going to give it a rewatch, very soon, because it was a lot of fun, and I really dug it. But this is the definition of the kind of movie that would flop.
Yeah, it's a simple story, while being complex at the same time. You have this outrageous character. You
have Nicolas Cage going all the way.
Yeah.
And it's crazy Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, and after seeing, and while doing research, people that they considered to play Peter Loew, no one else could do it but Nicolas Cage.
Really?
Yeah, they wanted Judd Nelson.
That's not good.
And it's like, Judd Nelson, really big at that time, the whole 80s movie. But they also wanted Sylvester Stallone. And I'm just like, what?
That's really one of those, we are casting for star power and not for right for the role, because I cannot imagine Sylvester Stallone playing this character. I can't imagine him doing half the shit that they have Nick Cage doing in here.
No, and it would have been a complete
completely different movie. Yeah.
It really would have been more of a drama.
It probably would have ended up being kind of like an American Psycho prequel.
Yeah, because with this movie, there's a lot of humor to it.
Mm.
While, there are some serious things that are dealt with in this movie because...
I mean, it's a black comedy.
It's a black comedy, but we do have Peter who goes and attacks his secretary.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, he's just tormenting this poor woman throughout the movie. And who's played by Maria Conchita Alonso.
Yeah.
Poor Alva, she just, takes a beating in this movie because it's not only this contract that he has her looking for, it's just...
He's abusive, he's mean.
He's chasing her down the hallways. You're the lowest one of the
totem pole, Alva. Also, I'm going to use that Nick Cage accent is great.
That is one thing that I was terrified after watching this movie. I'm like, Dean is going to talk like Peter Loew forever now.
Why would I do that, boo? I would never talk like Peter Loew. It's good stuff. It's Kino. But yeah, and the thing is okay, we're watching this, and I think Peter, even without being, psychotic, he's probably just not a pleasant person in, normal life, right? He seems kind of like a dick.
Yeah.
But we're invested in what's going on with him because it's like...
He is the main character. We are with him at all times.
Yeah, we see the world through his eyes, and as soon as we get a third-person perspective, we're like, oh, this guy's fucking nutso. And it's the other thing, I go back to Nicolas Cage's performance, he's so engaging when he's, talking, doing stuff, moving. Like, when he does... He literally just says the alphabet.
Yes.
Literally just says the alphabet, and I'm like, I can't look away from this. He is just going for it.
And now Dean will never say the alphabet the original way that he did in the past.
Can never do it.
He is now going to say it in the Peter Loew way forever.
Forever and ever. It's too good. It's too good.
But to kick it back to Alva, I mean, this poor woman, she's chased down hallways, he chases her into a bathroom, he sexually assaults her, he physically assaults her, and it's just like, my God, it's like, is anyone gonna help her?
Everybody's like, that's just old Peter, old wacky Peter.
It's insanity.
It is insanity. For God's sakes, Peter, eats a woman. He eats a pigeon, too.
He eats a pigeon, yeah, which was gross.
Ugh.
But, I mean, there's only 2 body counts in this movie. One including Peter, and the club girl, which right away, when he pulls back and you see the amount of blood coming off of her neck, I'm like, oh yeah, she's a goner.
Super dead.
Yeah, because he goes at her with his plastic fangs, and it's just the force and hitting one of those arteries. I'm like, yeah, that's it.
Also, let's be honest. You can tell just by watching the movies, he's hungry and he is crazy.
Yeah.
So it is a kind of a grotesque sequence there, and it's also in this bumping club, and he just walks out with his face covered in blood.
His face, his shirt, and no one even puts 2 and 2 together.
They're just like, man, that guy really caught that coke nosebleed in the bathroom. Ooh, man.
But one thing, when he was entering the club for the first time, and you just see people everywhere, and they're just crammed together on the dance floor. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's coming out of 2020. I was just like, oh my God, there were so many people, and they were so close together. I'm like, this is not good.
Boo's having the 2020 flashbacks.
A lot of PTSD. It was like, oh my God, there's so many people. But it was just like the amount of people he was surrounded, and no one questioned, why is he covered in blood?
That's another one of those things where it's just how much of this movie is in his head.
Exactly. It's like, he could have imagined this, but we do have the girl that dies. But it's crazy. I mean, he gets thrown out of the club, and people are making fun of him. The sun's coming up soon, and they're making the crosses on their fingers, and he's like, please, no.
I'm a vampire. I love that bit, by the way, where it's just Nick Cage walking through the streets of New York, dragging a fucking piece of a pallet behind him, covered in blood, disheveled as hell, yelling, I'm a vampire. A vampire! And I'm like, what the fuck am I watching?
And just, seeing him throughout the movie, reacting to the big neon cross, how he just drops, and the man's like, sir, your groceries. Or hearing the church bells, and he's, oh, the plagues of the undamned. And it was just like, he's just like going to town.
So funny.
I mean, his makeshift coffin that he does at home where he doesn't
It's
fit.
like the couch and the books and
it's either his head or his feet that stick out. And it's just like, yeah, you're not doing the coffin thing right. And the fact that he sets up his alarm clock next to him to make sure he gets up on time.
But of course.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I really dug this movie. Where else do you wanna take this convo?
Well, Jennifer Beals, who plays Rachel, our quote-unquote vampire in this movie, it was bugging me because I was like, I know I recognize you from things. And
she's like, well, I don't know how famous she is now, but she was in a bunch of stuff back in the 80s. She was in Flashdance, I think, was her big thing.
Yeah, and I had to look her up last night because it was just bugging me. It's like, I know I've seen you in things, and I just can't put your face where I think, I know I've seen you. And I was like, Flashdance was the first thing that popped up, and I was like, that's right, she was Alex in Flashdance. And I was just like, okay, this is pretty cool, but I think because she did The Bride, which was, based off of The Bride of Frankenstein in 85, she was able to do this movie in 88.
Oh, okay.
So she got to play basically, two monster lores back to back.
Oh, that is neat. I didn't know she did that.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting that she kind of got, a couple of years of monsters back to back in her filmography.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, kind of two, big monsters to tackle because Dracula is its own, entity, and The Bride of Frankenstein, that's another huge thing.
Yeah.
And I think she, really played a good job of being, the vampire, the temptress.
The vampire seductress.
And, we see her in the club and, she's laughing at Peter and calling him, pathetic and an imbecile. And he's just, I love you, you're everything to me. And then we see her on the dance floor and she's just a regular human being that's on there on a date. And she knows him because he picked her up in a bar one time and it's just, get away from me, you're a creep.
Please leave me alone, crazy person.
And he's, pulling her lips up to, look at her teeth, look at her teeth.
She's a vampire.
And that's why it was kind of like, at the end when we get that clip of her talking, it's like, well, was she? And she was playing it human?
No,
it's like,
God, no. Lowe's just crazy. All right, boo.
But this movie was something else.
It was something else. All right, final thoughts on this one?
It was a good time.
Good time? I love this movie. This is a great time.
And be prepared to hear Dean impersonate Peter Loew in future episodes because I know it'll come back when I least expect it.
Would you say it would come back to bite you?
Oh, God. Please don't bite me.
It's going to be great. All right, everybody. So, yeah, that was our Vampire's Kiss episode. But if you want to hear something different on the anniversary of our podcast next week, because we're going to be doing something special next week, right?
That's right. Next week is our 1-year anniversary of the Film Club podcast. And we're also kicking off the month of October. So we're not going to be playing on our regular Thursdays where we will be playing October 1st, which is a Friday. So we will still be there. And I think, to really kick off the month of October and to celebrate our podcast, we have to talk about a really influential film in film history and horror history.
Yep.
So we are going to be talking about Frankenstein, the 1931 version with Boris Karloff, Colin Clive. It is going to be amazing.
It's one of Boo's favorite movies.
All-time favorite movies. It's on my top 10 list.
Ooh, another one.
And yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. Don't miss it. Are you excited that we got to the 1-year mark?
We did. We made it 1 year. They said it would never last.
They said it wouldn't last, but here we are talking about movies a year later.
And then, the week after that, that's when we're retiring the podcast, right?
That's it. We made
over.
it to the 1-year mark. It's time to hang up the microphone and the headphones. That's it.
But if you wanted to keep listening on, where can they go?
Well, if you want to listen to us on a platform different than you currently are right now, we're on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we're also at a different location, not that you would think of.
We are. We're actually on YouTube, on the YouTube channel In the Frame. In the Frame, that has all the podcast we do. We have the Film Club podcast, the Double Feature podcast, the Film Odyssey podcast, Too Obscure for TV. We have all those podcasts on there. You can go watch them. They all look at something a little bit different. They all talk a little bit different. They all sound a little bit different. So if you don't like one of them, you can always search around and maybe find something you do enjoy.
That, and if you want to keep listening to movies, something different than we currently are, providing you guys, you could go listen to the Film Odyssey, where they're talking about the AFI Top 100 movies. Too Obscure, where you guys really pick out
the
weird random movies.
Vampire's Kiss would be the standard of the kind of movies we would talk about there.
Or Double Feature, where you guys talk about 2 movies at once.
We do. We bring 2 movies together, compare them, contrast them, kind of pit them against each other, but really it's just a kind of analysis of the themes and stuff going on there, and why the 2 movies work.
Yeah, so if you don't want to listen to us on a streaming service, we're on YouTube. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at the Film Club Podcast.
And with that,
we'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Peace.